All right, today we are looking at John Mattone's laws, number 5 and number 6. Let's take a look at these real quick. Law number 5 states the key to unlocking your massive potential is making the decision to be vulnerable. That's number 5. Number 6 states you have the choice to either accept or reject feedback. However, if you reject feedback, you also reject the choice of acting in a way that may very well bring more abundant success and happiness to you and to your organization. So let's get started here. This is Rich and Maikel with Mainline Executive Coaching, ACT. ACT, act. That's what leaders do. We get on it, we do it. We just don't think about it. We don't get around to it one of these days. We are on it. We are doing it. And ACT is also an acronym which stands for and cultural transformation, cultural training, transitioning, transformation. So there's this wonderful connection between leadership and culture. We talked about this before, that when we got great leadership, we got great culture. When we got great culture, that encourages great leadership. There's this great relationship that goes on and on that we want to perpetuate. That's what we do. We're executive coaches. And today we are very fortunate to have John Burt, a great executive coach, great pedigree that he's going to bring to us. John, would you do us a great pleasure of giving us me in 60 seconds elevator speech? Introduce yourself to the folks.
Okay, great. Good morning, Rich. Good morning, Maikel. Thanks a lot for having me on the podcast today. My name is John Burt. I'm an executive leadership coach with ILEC, and I work with individual leaders as well as leadership teams to improve performance and develop cultures that drive results. I've been a business and an IT consultant for most of my career. I worked with a number of notable companies like IBM, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Ernst & Young. And I've helped dozens of Fortune 100 companies in the industrial sector to solve some of their critical business issues and implement new strategies leveraging technology. I'm most proud of my success in building and leading incredible teams and developing leaders. And I've leveraged all of this experience in my executive coaching business.
That's great. That's fabulous. Thank you. It is really a pleasure to have you here today. Rich, let's get into this. Let's start talking about these laws a bit. Give us an intro here, would you?
Okay, I think we're going to talk about both these laws, I think one at a time, but then we're going to time together to show how the synergies between the two laws work. So let's talk about vulnerability right off the bat. Let's talk about vulnerability and define that just a little bit. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around what vulnerability really is. But vulnerability really is a willingness to show emotion and to allow one's weakness to be seen or known, be transparent. That doesn't mean to be weak. It doesn't mean to give up on who you are. It simply means, that allowing transparency, allowing others to work with you and help you find that success. So it's about being open to honesty, trust. That's really what the vulnerability decision is, and really it's the most important aspect of getting to the core of who you are as a leader. So John,
before you go on, I know everybody's thinking this, and then we'll get back to John. There is also, everybody knows that this idea of vulnerability can also put us in a position of risk where we could be hurt or we could be attacked. I mean, that's a real thought. That's not like, oh, no. I'm going to share at the end of this podcast today an example of that and how that's handled. A very inspiring anecdote that I'll share with you. But let's just lay that on the table. That's also right there. We know that. So what do we do with it? So, okay, go on, John. Thanks.
All right, sure. And thanks, Rich. It's really a great question. When I look at older leaders that I work with, they tend to operate in what I call the John Wayne model. And for those of you, maybe this is an old reference. I mean, there's a lot of like tough guy types of leaders, right? And they all feel like they need to be the smartest person in the room and have all the answers. And unfortunately, I think that model of leadership is being replaced. And more leaders are recognizing this value of vulnerability. What vulnerability is it's definitely not a weakness, right? It's not indecision or a failure of leadership. I like to think of vulnerability as really being the pinnacle or really a demonstration of great leadership, right? It's a true leader is somebody who is able to recognize that they don't have all the answers, right? That they're not the smartest person in the room, if you will, right? And they really look and reach out to others to get their insights, right? To help drive the ball forward, to help pursue the ultimate goal for the team.
Okay, so that's great. I like that a lot. Thank you, John. So here's the deal. When we take a look at this idea of vulnerability, what is it not? Give us a little bit, Rich, of insight about what it is not, and also give us an idea of what kind of courage does it really take? Let's talk about this, be honest about it. What kind of courage does it take to be vulnerable?
You know, I like what John said about the John Wayne approach. You know, I guess back in the day in Hollywood, there's a story of John Wayne approaching Kirk Douglas, who had taken a different role in the show that didn't really stand up to John Wayne's, I guess, approval of the tough guy thing. I guess he saw him at a party and basically said, "Dude, what are you thinking?" type thing. You know, what are you going that way for? So really, vulnerability doesn't mean giving up who you are. Doesn't mean giving up on yourself. It means allowing different traits to be transparent, allowing yourself to be transparent and open to suggestions, open to other ideas, open to those people around you. Just because you have that title or you're in that leadership position doesn't mean you're the propeller head in the room. Like John said, you know, just because that you have that title doesn't mean you're the know-it-all. You have to be able to open yourself up and allow others in to help you get to that next level. And I think a lot of that, it's not about becoming soft. It really isn't. It's about opening up, being honest, being transparent. And that doesn't mean being soft. You still have a goal. You still have resolve. You got to keep that.
So there's an interesting thing here, and the trade-off, and we'll talk about it more in future broadcasts. There's this idea, it feels a little bit, I think, to some leaders like I'm going to be jumping into the volcano when it's very active. It's hot lava, and I'm going in there. And there's a certain amount of maybe beliefs or way you see yourself, you got to give up. You know, you got to be willing to say, I don't know it all, as you guys have talked about. I don't always have to be the one where it's always invented here. I don't always have to be the smart one. I don't always have to be the one that drives the whole thing. So vulnerability, John, I'm going to ask you about this. When we give that up and we're willing to now not only be vulnerable, we're willing to be altruistic in a lot of ways and courageous, this begins this process of unlocking massive potential. What is massive potential? And what is that unlocking all about?
Well, absolutely, Michael, and thank you. Right, you know, I think once, you know, obviously once the leader chooses and makes the decision to be vulnerable, right, they develop this deep understanding that they don't have all the answers, and that you know there may be other and maybe better answers out there. And I think that's where it starts, right? When the teams that I've led, and with my clients and talking to them about the teams that they're leading, you know, there's enormous potential in that team in terms of ideas and concepts and insights that they can help. And once you open up as a leader and you start to invite that in, first of all, you start to, with the transparency and the ability to take that input, you start to build trust with the team, right? And then they also trust you more, right? And then there's a commitment that gets developed from the folks on your teams in terms of, hey, listen, he's listening to me. He's trying to hear what I think about this subject. Even if you don't ultimately choose that person's idea, they feel like they're included. And I think that drives a lot more trust, a lot more commitment, but also just the expansiveness of some of the teams. I mean, I've always just been amazed in my career as I started to make that vulnerability decision and not having to be that smart guy in the room all the time. How many brilliant people, just my perspective, right? But the brilliant people I had working with me and all the great ideas. And then once I got comfortable with that, it was just explosive growth in terms of what my team could do.
Interestingly enough, you don't anticipate this as a leader when you give that up. I mean, it is a give up. But when you do it and you really do it, one of the things that you notice right off the bat is there's a great sense of relief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. There's that. The other thing is, all of a sudden, as you're talking about all these brilliant people and their ideas, there's that level of now ideas and exchanges that take place. And there's another level of camaraderie that starts developing. this association with each other that's not protecting, my territory, your territory, that territory. All of a sudden, as we let that down, we start finding out about each other. We start learning about each other. There's this sense of relationship that starts. And that's really, when you really take a look at that, that's when the trust starts happening, synergy starts happening, some great, great things start to happen just because we let that down. Give us some more ideas on that. Rich, do you have some, do you want to share with us on that?
On the feedback?
Yeah.
Feedback can be one of the hardest things you can get, because it opens up your weaknesses. It opens up that, you're looking in a mirror that you may not have wanted to look into. And so when we talk about success, when we talk about abundance, define that for me. What's personal success? I think we need to turn that around, that it needs to be, as a leader, it's got to be organizational success. Your success comes from the organizational success as a leader. So I think we need to understand that when coaches come in, and where we're getting this kind of feedback, is coming with love. It really is. It's coming with a sense of wanting to help that individual or help you get to the next level. And sometimes you've got to break down barriers to get to that next level. And so that feedback, can do that. And if it's done properly, if it's done with love, it's gonna help you go a long ways. If you choose to reject that feedback, you could be giving up on a lot of opportunities. And not only that, opportunities for your organization. Organizational success and the people around you, they all succeed and find this abundance in, could be with additional customers, additional growth in the organization, a kinder, better workplace. I don't know if kinder is the right word, but you know what I'm saying, a better place to be with your team, where you're working all to one's goal. But I think it all comes back to that vulnerability decision. Are you going to be willing to accept that feedback? Are you going to do you understand where that feedback is coming from? And feedback's not always easy to take.
It's interesting. I've got some friends that have been special ops guys. Very interesting people. They can be the gentlest souls in the world, in all honesty. And yet they can turn on a dime, and all of a sudden they are that person that's going to take out that guy, that person that's the real threat. They're very, very interesting people to deal with. And this idea of as a team working together, they work in the most brutal of situations, the most life and death situations, and yet their ability to work as a team together almost seamlessly. And so you're talking about kind, is what came to my mind. Are they kind? They are connected in a way of association, of relationship, of taking care of each other like nothing else. I mean, they're not fighting, like they say, for the homeland, you might say. They're fighting for each other. And there's a kind of thoughtfulness that is very powerful. There was an example, I'll get really, really quick, that they were out, this one troop was out on patrol, and they got an ambush. And all of a sudden, there was this very strong smell of urine. And one of the guys had just, lost it and just let it go. And the smell of urine was so strong that when they said, okay, this is not good. The problem here is not just you and us being safe. You're going to get dehydrated. Get some water, the guy said. Get some water, you're dehydrated. Because if you don't get hydrated, you're not going to be in the shot here. You're not going to be part of what we're doing here. So it's that kind of consideration, that kind of immediacy of taking care of each other that's so very important. Let's talk about this idea of abundance. Give us some ideas about what this abundance is all about and the decision to do that so that leads to this outcome of abundance. Who'd like to talk about that? John, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, certainly. I think that with regard to gaining abundance, and the reason why I've written a lot about this law and spoken about it is that I really believe that feedback is a gift, right? For you to get true feedback from somebody, right? Unvarnished feedback is one of the hardest things, I think, first of all, to elicit from people, but also then sometimes to receive and to process and to deal with it, right? But first of all, if you're asking for somebody, and they're always giving you positive things, you're probably not hitting the mark, right? I mean, honestly, love positive feedback, but sometimes having more critical feedback is where you wind up growing. So first of all, having the trust, as you were talking about, the trust amongst the team members, that they trust you, that they know that you're not going to use it against them, that you're not going to, there's no retribution involved in it, is really a tricky dribble, right? You got to get people to willing to share with you the feedback, and then just they will see you in your actions, trying to incorporate that and to pivot, if you will, based upon the feedback. And I think that's where you start to see the abundance. It's a synergistic process, Michael, that people will give you feedback. You thank them for it. You incorporate it. They see it as part of you're incorporating it into your work style, your leadership style. They wind up wanting to share more with you. They're more committed. There's more trust. And I think that's where the abundance comes from, is you get to exponential benefits of seeking the feedback and allowing yourself to accept it and to process it.
Yeah, some great things come out of that. You, for the leader, the people that you work with, you start, modeling a whole new way of communication and working together. And then, of course, the culture benefits by it greatly as well. What are your thoughts? Thank you, John. What are your thoughts on that, Rich?
John brings a good point on how feedback is delivered. It really is. Bear with me for a minute. I mean, it's human nature. If you're, say, for example, you're in a room with somebody and there's a great big painting on a wall, and you're trying to point out something on the painting and they're not getting it, and you grab them by the sides of the head and point them, this is what I want you to look at. They're going to fight you. They're going to fight you. But if you take them and you walk them through what you're trying to show them and point out this thing on this painting, they're going to follow you. And it's the same thing with feedback. If you come at somebody, y'all suck, don't quit your day gig type thing. And that's the feedback you're going to give somebody versus, I think you did great, but this is where I see, you can improve. That kind of feedback. And it's all done, if it's done with love and understanding and pointing them in the right direction, it's just like John said, that's where a lot of that abundance comes from. You start building that rapport, and then the abundance comes from that.
Let me share with you something that I mentioned earlier in the podcast here. I was with a group. There was a sales group. They brought in another sales group from the outside. So there was a team that was already in-house, and then they brought this new team that was already existent into this. And the team that was already in-house, he was like the image guy, right? The shirt, the tie, everything just exactly right. The hair's all in place, all image, all ego. The guy that led our team that was brought into it, very down to earth guy, very, very real kind of a guy. I'm going to tell it the way that it is. And there was this tension between these two leaders. And the image guy, you could just see him, day after day, get a little bit more tight, a little bit more upset, a little bit more just wait. And at some point, he said to the guy that headed my team, "We got to talk. We got to talk." And so the two of them went into a room, and it was a glass. You could see through this thing. You could see. And this guy's standing here. My buddy is sitting against a desk, just listening. And this guy unloads, and he unloads, and he unloads. And this goes on for like 10, 15 minutes. You keep thinking it's going to end soon. It's going to end. It doesn't. And it goes on and on and on. And my buddy's just leaning against the desk. He starts to stand up. Then he sits back down. He's nodding his head. Okay. It goes back and forth. And this guy just unloads. My buddy's just, okay, got it. When he finally runs out of gas, my buddy stands up, puts his arm around the guy, and says a few words. I don't know what it was. They walked out of that office together and said, we just had a great conversation, and we're going to do some things a little bit differently. But I just want everybody to know we're okay. We're fine. It's going to be just great. So that's all we're going to say about it. And he moved on, just completely unflustered. Yes. Just had that ability to take it and take it. Never was like beat down. Never was, felt like he was treated badly. It was just like, he's just that guy that could take it and then turn it around to make it into something really good. That, my friends, is a powerful leader. And he was a great, great leader. All right, let's wrap this up here. John, somebody wants to get a hold of you, they want to have that critical conversation with John. How can I take it up to the next level? How can you help me get it to where I want to go? How do they get a hold of you? What do they do?
All right. Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. And I hope all the listeners have really learned something today and we're inspired to take the next step. If you want to reach me, probably the better two different ways, best ways to get a hold of me. One is through my website, and that's at johnburt.intelligentleadershipec.com. I know that's a mouthful, but you can also call me at 720-235-9370.
All right, outstanding. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. It's great. We'll have you back again. Hopefully you will come back.
Thank you.
All right, Rich, take it out for us.
All right, John, once again, thank you very much. And I'll add your contact information on the notes after. But if you have anything you want to, any comments, suggestions, or something you want to hear in a future podcast, mainlineleadersact@gmail.com. That's mainlineleaderact@gmail.com or richbarron.intelligentleadershipec.com. And again, subscribe to this podcast. And we got a lot of good things coming up. Once again, thank you for being here today, and be safe and take care.
All right.